other thing is please. I can't see anything on that.
Oh,
Counselors will have access to the materials, so it's not the end of the world. Okay, so we have come to order and read the territorial acknowledgement. Next is approval of the agenda, which I have moved. Cannon has seconded. Does anybody wish to speak to the item? Would you like to speak to that? Okay. Then we'll take it to a vote. Does anybody oppose approving the agenda? Any abstention? Okay, so it carries. We've approved the agenda. Move to approval of the minutes. Be it resolved that council approve the minutes of the May 14th, 2022 meeting as presented in Appendix B. There's a note that summary document of the June meeting where we failed to meet quorum has been included. Would anybody like to move approval of the minutes? Cannon moves. Is there a second? I see Vincent first. Anybody want to speak to the minutes? Okay, we shall vote to approve. Does anybody oppose approving the minutes? Any abstention? Okay, carries. We move to reports. I report that we have new bylaws. The election is underway. So the work that I'm doing is mostly with staff on preparing sort of a transition for the new board. And we're also considering sort of the how the policy structure will work and endeavoring to prepare for the board when they meet next a summary, a sort of a calendar or a work plan for the next board to work through the existing policies and procedures of the board and council. We're hoping to have committees kind of decided on their structure before the new board takes office so that those committees can start working. Starting to upload some of the policies that can already be shared. So that's things like the human resources policy manual, of which the board had approved last fiscal year. And the new director compensation policy, which has been approved, and other documents that are likely ready to go. Sort of considering how they'll be organized, likely taking advantage of the SharePoint that has now been integrated into the WUSA website. So it'll probably look like disaggregating the policies into individual documents so that people can just find what they need. And that is that. Are there any questions? Cannon.
Has the list been prepared for different kind of, I guess, areas which each director might take the lead on, like, so we have an idea of how they're going to distribute among the new board?
So that, I think that is pretty much like, we're considering that as like the same question as the committee structure, basically. So there is roughly an idea to have, I think, I want to say like 4-ish topic areas for like advocacy advisory groups. So academic affairs, government affairs, co-op, which will likely exist in the same form it does now through Co-op Students Council. And then sort of like a student safety, wellness, equity, accessibility kind of group. And then other than that, like the board committees will likely continue to exist. So audit and risk management is like the major one. There's an open question about like the funding committees, whether those questions can just live with the board, like planning student spaces and works, for example, if there's just capital improvement, like, you know, appropriations for capital improvement or whatever, like, can the board just consider those? Similar for IFC, I think, but it's kind of an open question, and the budget committee is another open question where if staff are going to be taking more of a lead on preparing the budget, to what extent is a budget committee like strictly required? Whereas like historically, that's basically just been like the group that the VP operations and finance goes to like get support in literally preparing the budget, but that's not how we expect to be doing things in the new model. So kind of an open question. And I'll say that like the board will be apprised of what this looks like. And I think ultimately it's like, it makes sense for board to be considering what that looks like.
Follow-ups, in terms of like, so the comment on the budget committee, I think, while we do help prepare the budget, I think there's also, the role of the ESC is also to not just like create the documents but also look at and see where they believe the stream money should be best used at, and that is the role that a committee should have in my opinion. They also look at comparing actuals to make sure staff and like the execs or whatever different departments are not going over budget. Otherwise, these things kind of don't show up. They'll be looking at the audit statement, which is a year down the line, and there's no way we can do anything about it. So there's definitely, in my opinion, a space for that committee. And secondly, as I said, these are open questions. We are near becoming like, it's less than 2 months since the new board kind of comes into force. When can we expect these open-ended questions to somewhat have a closed answer?
I would say by the time that the board meets in August is like a reasonable time to have it solidified, which I imagine will be before the transition, which we're planning for the week of the 22nd and 26th of August, which is after the end of the co-op term. So we should expect that all of the director candidates be prepared to attend in that week. And we'll take your comments on the budget committee under advisement. Vincent?
I think it was our March meeting, council moved to direct the president to prepare documents, I think, if I remember right, is that I think the approval of COPS as well on how we're going to maintain society relations in the new model, as well as a procedure for how the size of the board will change over time so that we don't give that kind of conflict of interest question to the new board to try to resolve. What's been happening on that front, and when can we expect those procedures and documents to be in place?
So in the spring, Catherine has been working with the committee of presidents as far as the procedure for changing the size of the board. There hasn't been any work done on it, but I think to an extent we satisfied that question in the language of the bylaws, which requires that it be changes be approved by 2/3 of the members, which is a sufficiently large threshold that the new board would have to be able to justify it. The society's relation stuff, I'm understanding that Mike.
We have like an 80% completed document that Catherine will be sharing with COPS throughout the next couple of weeks.
And can council expect to see that document once it's finalized?
I think the plan is for those to be presented at August meeting, once those committees have had a week or two to sort of review and make edits as they see fit.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When we are kind of working on seeing how the community will always will metrics is there any plans to meet sort of the starting committees to ask what their opinion as they are the one who're doing the work in the current model for those areas to get their opinion on things?
I would say no. I mean, frankly, I think it's evident at this point that we're struggling with engagement, and I don't think it is worthwhile for us to be trying to bring people into the conversation who aren't thinking about it. And we're kind of reaching the point where it makes sense for the people who are doing this work to just do it and bring it to the new board and to an extent, they will have to figure it out. Like, can you give an example of a committee that you would like to
AAC,
see?
for example, like, till the point you brought up that we might not even have a budget committee, I think. I'm sorry to say, I'm kind of disappointed that this process, like, and this hasn't been a conversation about the entire government reviews, like, it feels like it's really being done behind closed door, and there's no place for people, like, BSC has always had the membership meet for when required. Same for ARMC, like, same for those important committees. I don't know about other committees I've been part of, they've always met when required. So I feel like just because some people or some committees are not able to meet doesn't mean that we stop trying to get information and opinions from people who are doing that work right now.
I mean, frankly, I think the feedback that we'll get from BAC on if you ask if they should continue is that they should continue. And we can I think there is a balance to be struck between from my perspective, just endlessly seeking out the opinions of committees for just for its own sake is not a good use of time. To be frank, I don't think there's anything to be gained from it. The whole point of moving to the new model is that it's going to be a different thing. Why should we take into consideration people who've been working in a certain context? We're working with the government's consultants whose expert advice we have sought for this, and who have an understanding of how this works in different organizations. And my view is that we should privilege that opinion over those of people who, frankly, have been involved very little in how this is done.
I kind of disagree with that entire perspective that just because we're moving to the new model, there aren't things that we can learn from the old model. And while, yes, government consultants might have expertise in certain sections of the process, but I still feel at the end of the day, we are an organization with student voices need to be heard. We are people who are elected to represent those voices. It's not just the execs, like staff members who are supposed to be dealing with all of this stuff and doing what they want. In the end of the day, just trying to get the changes rubber stamped through board or council, maybe not even getting rubber stamped. I don't know if the process is going to look for that approval, but I really feel like it's too much of a concentration of power between some people, and it's not what a democracy looks like in my opinion at this point.
Yeah, I was just gonna provide a correction also Ben's response originally. When it comes to figuring out how the advocacy type committees are looking like, I'm still preparing the document that council asked for back in March. And my intention is to bring that to EAC to have a discussion on what makes the most sense to divvy up folks. Because right now we have the PAs sort of informing also government advocacy, which again is fine, but I'm wondering if it makes sense for all the societies to do so, and if we need to open up a little bit more flexibility as in terms of who is informing that from the societies. But probably my intent is to bring in the senators, the BPAs, and presidents to figure out what makes the most sense. I also spoken to the Committee on Access and Disability in terms of how their future looks like going forward. So at least when it comes to advocacy type things that are underneath my purview, I do intend to consult and engage the committees, because those committees have been actively engaged in meeting forum for the most part.
I just want to second Councillor Sharma's comments from there.
Are there any other questions? Okay, we go to VP Education.
Hi, folks. I've included my report, which I believe provides sort of a holistic overview of what I've been working on over the last couple of weeks. The biggest thing that's been taking up my time is the digital learning strategy consultations. I've managed to do consults with all of the faculties, with the exception of arts, because I believe ASU is not currently active and awesome. Although that was a fault on my part for not actually just sending out an email there. So if you are from Boston, my apologies. I sent an email sort of requesting to engage for feedback in that process. Otherwise, USA has set its sort of annual advocacy priorities. New crew is working on doing the same. Unfortunately, we were unable to meet due to Roger's Let's Not Talk Day. That happened on Friday. So we'll be working on that. Setting up to meet with some politicians very shortly. The incumbents who already have their offices together is what we're going to be meeting starting next week and sort of onward. The ones with the satellite campuses and those sort of areas going to come later. We're realizing that we probably need to collect more specific data from students on the satellite campuses in order to form consultations. So I'm working with the advocacy staff to figure out how to do those consultations, and hopefully in sort of in September, sort of onward, we'll be armed with that information. Municipal elections are coming in October, so that's something that we're sort of keeping our eye out on. But it's also the reason why we sort of paused when it comes to municipal meetings, just because there's very little time for city council to actually enact anything. But we are keeping our eye on housing, just because of the level of housing. IFC, I have been having trouble meeting, unfortunately. So there's an item in the agenda sort of there because there are applicants waiting to hear back, and I would like to provide them a response. Oh, yes, and also working on changes to Policy 70 committee that I'm part of, whereby PAC gave me the directive, and I believe I mentioned this to council last time, that I have been directed to try to get student involvement on petitions committees, as that is not completely across the board. So far, it seems it only occurs within engineering and co-op. So we would hopefully like to see that in other faculties as well, as students do provide important perspective. Any questions, concerns, comments?
Vincent.
Was that last thing you're talking about? So there's something engineering and co-op?
Yes. From what I've been told from the administration, like the university themselves, when it comes to policy 70 petitions committees, it's only co-op and engineering that have them at like the lowest sort of level. I believe science and math have them for like something is appealed or like a grievance or something along the line of that. I believe we're specifically referring to petitions here.
Some other thing.
On the student course perception surveys, you mentioned in your report that there are some faculty that is having issues with student feedback being considered as, you know, part of the calculation of things like quotas and stuff. Are there any specific faculties or departments where that's a very prevalent view, or is this like kind of a widespread thing amongst all faculty?
I imagine that there's pockets of them. A lot of this is sort of informed by, I know it's an adamant stance of the faculty association has taken around student and the line. Just talking to the person responsible for that on the university's end, I know that she gets harassing emails from prompts. I haven't been told which prompts specifically, but it seems to be an ongoing and recurring issue that hopefully is not bubbled up as large as it did 2-3 years ago when they first announced to start this project. So thanks for reminding me about that. Student course perception surveys do come out. Do it. Please get your peers to do it. If we don't, we will have very little grounds to argue that student course perception surveys should inform tenureship and other decisions, which means that we will have very little accountability over the quality of teaching. So please, 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 please don't look at it.
I think I might talk to the same person you were referring to. I believe mentioned psychology department, if I remember right. pushback. And I think that was pushing back on the spirit I put on some specifics of the questions. This was a while ago. And apparently engineering, I thought it somehow involved like filtering out like harassing feedback, like racist comments and that kind of stuff. And maybe that's something to look into, like how students need to be directly involved, or if there should, but there could be some way to filter out like harassing comments. But I think it's really important that honest student feedback is provided to professors. One issue that we have identified, so I'm trying to look into this, is that if a student drops a course, there's no way they're going to give feedback. And a lot of the time, when students drop a course, it might be because of some issue with the professor. So in MassDoc, we're looking to see if there's some way that feedback of students who drop courses can still be heard, even though we recognize there's probably no way we'll be able to convince the faculty to consider it for like promotion and tenure decisions. At least just have a way for those students to be heard so professors can read that feedback. So that's another thing I think would be good to see.
Yeah, all those definitely sound like good ideas. And I believe during the EAC meeting, I believe those were related to the individual responsible for that. And I'm hoping that we still maintain the dialogue with that individual when it comes to figuring out where teaching assessment processes sort of go in line in the future. But we really do need to get those numbers up, the response rates up, with thoughtful feedback. And like, again, I don't think I need to say this, but do not put racist, disparaging, or whatever comments that have nothing to do with the professor teaching, because that's how we are not allowed to hold professors accountable when people do that. So.
Do you know roughly what the response rates for these surveys are right now?
I can find it for council. I do not have it on top of my head, but I have heard that they were like very, very low. But in part, that was also, I think, due to us not pulling together sort of the promotion materials and we're confirming that. So I'm hoping to get that ready in front and distributing across the societies and senators by the time these ones roll around.
And do you know if like online school during COVID had a significant impact on the response rates?
For last terms, yes. For the previous terms, somewhat, but not as much. Usually in like an in-person course context, the professor is required to like set aside time during the course for students to do it. So for online, that obviously wouldn't happen. We've also moved from having it be on a written piece of paper to being online. So when the professor sets aside time to do it, it's no longer like this time-contained thing. So sometimes students like will just do something else in the middle of their class, and we've had conversations with that with the director teaching assessment processes, if there's a way to sort of, you know, incentivize students to like actually use that time or make sure that professors are setting aside the time. So that's something we're actively workshopping to figure out, but yeah.
Okay, seeing no further questions, we'll go to the Vice President, Operations and Finance.
Thank you very much. So I don't have a huge amount that I want to enumerate too much for council because I've been mostly dominating my time off the operational things you've heard about many, many times. So most of that is stuck in just keeping things going and supporting staff in the way that, you know, this role still does, in the very operational way that it functions. But in general, I want to call it that I attracted student care about returning to pre-pandemic methods of like promotion and advertisement for like the plan. So the students are more well aware of what they have access to, how they use the plan, how they get to actually like use the benefits they have from the insurance plan. So that's like, you know, in-person booth step welcome week and and signage and, as well as like online things and social media content that has been, even more embraced during the pandemic. So a good mix of that coming back. But other than that, a huge amount I wanted to highlight for council today. I'm not going to take any questions on anything with the portfolio, my portfolio managers. Quick. Actually, I'll leave that. I mean, Suzanne's been off the past week, so I'm going to chat with her more about that. So I could chat with you tomorrow once I will chat with her.
Vincent.
Has there been any updates in terms of the WUSA housing project?
No updates, as I said, I and staff have all been just stuck with operational things. It's been a pretty heady month getting ready for elections and preparing for welcome week and everything. So there has been no progress on that project.
So the report, I think last council meeting, you mentioned some report was completed and you were going to look over that. Have you had a chance to look at that yet? And could we share it with council?
Yes, I heard. Oh, I think I promised to send it out. My apologies, I forgot to do that. I'll send it out tonight. Thank you.
Okay, so next is the Vice President Student Plan.
Hello. I think that for the most part, sorry, I hear an echo. Is there any way to fix it? Or should I just mute my computer while I talk? Oh, okay, that works. For the most part, I've been doing some committee stuff. So as council is aware, I'm currently chairing COPS and we've met twice so far to one, just sort of facilitate communication between society presidents as well as WUSA, and more recently to make sure that our society MOU is good to go for the new governing model, just to change some language so that how operations will work in the new model, there's to make sure there's clarity to that, as some of the words will become a little bit unclear in their meaning once the new governance model kicks in. Publications committee has been meeting. That's not a council thing. CLAC is meeting tomorrow at the request of a member. I've also been working on just some university-facing advocacy, usually mostly in the campus wellness area, and just supporting staff wherever I can. I've been doing a little bit of preparation for transition, and I think that's most of it. Oh, and meeting with GSA is starting up shortly now that they have hit the ground running. And also some clubs things, but unfortunately I can't provide too much detail there. And we recently had volunteer appreciation, so happy to have seen so many familiar faces there.
Any questions in the room? Vincent?
So, student president report has mentioned that you've been doing some work on the documents on how we'll maintain society relations under the new model. Can you talk a little bit about what's been going on that front? Like what kinds of things that are decided or used?
You're a little bit hard to hear. I'm not sure if you can move closer to the microphone to speak.
I'll approach the bench.
Thank you.
So during the president's report, it was mentioned that you've been doing some work on the society relations stuff in terms of the new model. Can you talk a bit about, I guess, what's been going into that, what's already been decided, and like what remains to be decided in terms of maintaining society relations in the new governance model?
Yeah, of course. The biggest thing is that COPS will remain existent. There will still be a committee that is met, that is of all the presidents of societies. Most things, or actually everything that's in the society's MOU, which details the relationship financially between WUSA and societies, as well as how events administration, I guess, with event forms and insurance will work. So that will all be staying the same, albeit on the back end of our side, some specification that the responsibility, while overall overseen by the president, making it clear that the actual duties to carry out the tasks to fulfill that responsibility will be primarily staff driven, which is really the same as it's been right now, but just making sure that that expectation is clear. Some of the other bits of society relations, Mike has been helping to sort of map out any areas where we might see a little bit of change. And then otherwise, it's just been at COPS meeting, at COPS meetings, opening the floor to any questions or concerns from society presidents with respect to the new model and how society relations will work there, and then addressing those as they come up. So far, there hasn't been that much because understandably, as long as we have COPS and as long as all the other places where WUSA has a duty to fulfill to the societies are made clear as they are, there shouldn't be any other substantial changes.
Any other questions? Okay, next is the report of Board of Directors.
Hello, folks. I'm not happy as some might recognize. In their June regular meeting, the board appointed a new chair to do the work. Basically, I'm the new chair, never mind. Abby still helps when required from my side, so that's good. We have met twice, once in June and once in June again at a special meeting. We discussed some policies, HR policies, the director compensation policy. We had a presentation from student care on stuff, and that's about it. The only person who was absent was Abby from the special board meeting, but that's all from my side as director, board chair. Sorry. Chair. Any questions? Sounds cool.
Nope.
Okay, seeing none, we move to representative reports. I guess I'll ask people to just raise their hands and we'll go that way to spare us the anyone Bueller ad nauseum. So if you want to give a representative report, put your hand up and we'll call on you.
Arts is first.
Well,
Or, oh, you, yeah, okay, never mind, that's smart.
Shame them for not being here.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, no,
Vincent.
So on that, we just had elections, by-elections and general elections. Both wrapped up nicely. Congratulations, Councilor Girardin. It's been long as president for a fall term. C&D renovations have finally started. Lintups finally did the paperwork. Apparently, we're looking at sometime in September now. Other than that, not too many big developments. There's nothing bad is happening. Yeah.
Any questions from that? Okay, anybody else want to give a representative report? Okay, seeing none. Oh, sorry, Francis, go ahead.
Hi, sorry, I was like debating not speaking because my voice is pretty gone, but not much to update, but I did want to say that engineering had like a really, really fun engineering day on Friday. And it's been like, I don't know, this term has felt a little, I guess, rocky being the first like full in-person term. But I think like engineering day was just kind of representative of like one of the few like many events that our faculty has been like putting on that kind of makes everything seem like it's looking up in terms of being back in person, among other events. You know, like we had like a really good like excursion to Pride last weekend or 2 weekends ago, sorry. And just yeah, just other events that are going on that feel really good for the faculty. Thanks.
Thanks, Francis. Okay. Any other representative reports? Okay. Then we go to officers. I have nothing to report for my report. I already did one.
I guess for my report, there is a motion brought forward by Council Macri to remove delinquent counselors, and we'll discuss that there. Other than that, I have nothing to report.
Secretary. Oh, sorry, thank you. I have nothing particular to report as secretary, but if this is when the recording secretary or assistant secretary want to say anything, now is the time.
The only thing I'll say is that Connor has moved on from assistant secretary as he has graduated, I think. And he has resigned his chair and obviously his position, but that is okay. Yeah, I just wanted to recognize that he was helpful throughout this last year and good work to him.
Thank you. Okay, then we go to general orders. Vicky.
Hi, Mike. I know I asked you earlier this week, but has there been any updates on uploading, I guess, May and June and this like the general meetings to the WUSA YouTube page?
That is correct. Sorry about that. Yes, the May meeting, I think Ben hit the button to record, so I have to just chat with him so that we can upload that, and then I will. I don't know if we'll upload the June because it wasn't really a fully constituted meeting. Is it worth uploading?
Oh, for council meeting.
Yeah. Whatever. We'll make a decision or something. So May, I will make sure it gets up by the end of this week. And then, yes, the special general meetings, May and June, the one that did not meet, or no, the one that did not make any decisions, should probably go up as well because it did meet quorum. So those are 3 things that I will ask the IT team to upload this week. Thank you.
Okay. So now we go to general orders. First is the creation of a SLC deferred maintenance fund. And I'll read a motion. Whereas the purpose of the SLC operations fee under the operations fee was for costs associated with running and maintaining the Student Life Center, and whereas Student Life Center operations fee was historically dominated by the staff costs associated with SLC operations, it has recently been taken on by the Student Services fee and has returned to supporting SLC operations more generally, and whereas the Planning, Student Spaces and Works Committee has noted that the SLC has significant deferred maintenance needs that require additional investment beyond the means of the Capital Improvement Fund, and it has recommended that the existing SLC operations fee be redirected to a deferred maintenance fund to effectively serve its original purpose. Then be it resolved that council recommend to the board under Board Procedure 30, Reserves and Reserve funds, the permanent diversion of the amount of the SLC operations fee to an SLC deferred maintenance fund, such that the SLC can be sustainably maintained as the building matures. So that. I'll ask Matthew to move that.
Yes, I will.
Is there a second? And in seconds. Like to speak to it, Matthew?
Yes, I would. So you have to forgive me if I'm a little fuzzy on some of the details. I wrote this intending it for last council, but I'll do my best. Broadly, the need is, as was highlighted in the motion, the SLC, particularly the old part of it, not the new part of it, has significant deferred maintenance needs. One of those needs are being seen to right now. Notice that one of the floors is closed, or 2 of the floors are closed to fix up a lot of the carpet in the section on 3rd floor. But that's just one in a very long list of maintenance items that the SLC needs that up until now has been taken on by the SLC budget or by the capital improvement fund that we have. But the capital improvement funds is, the idea around that is, new capital improvements, new things that benefit students. That's what we promised that fee for. And we are charging this existing SLC fee to support the SLC, which it has been doing, but it makes it accounting wise and finances wise and longevity wise a lot easier to use these funds on these deferred maintenance items if we start setting aside the fund. So, in years where it's not used as much, it can sit and be used when there's another need that comes forward. So the reason for this is purely just to be able to continue supporting the SLC because the capital improvement fund fee and fund as it is not sufficient to be able to worry about these SLC items and also do these other things we want to do for students that we promise students. So this is really just returning the fee as much as possible back to its roots of making sure the SLC continues to serve students. It's a pretty boring motion actually, but.
Can I ask a question for record sake? Through you? What, do you have an amount?
The fee. Oh, I thought I included it. My apologies. It's about $491, I believe is the fee. It's been part of our fee schedule for a very long time. And then when we combined the fees all back last May into those 3 buckets, it was put into the operations fee for just like labeling purposes.
Any questions? Okay, then we shall go to a vote. Does anybody oppose the motion? Does anybody wish to abstain? Okay, motion carries. And we move to removal of delinquent counselors. Whereas counselors who are frequently absent from Bruns Council for meeting quorum, and whereas the counselors listed below are both eligible for removal due to having at least 3 absences and have also missed the most recent 3 council meetings. And whereas the primary job of a counselor is to represent their constituents by attending council meetings. Then be it resolved that council suspends procedure 9 and removes the following people from council: Nuer Akron, Yuhan Zhang, Tristan Chen, Jaja Kong, Azurun Alfaz Sarfraz, Mohammed Dutikoli, Carolyn Chan, and Sahil Devani. This is submitted by Councilor Macri, who I will take to move, and I see Evan will second. So I'll just note that the suspension of procedure will require a supermajority. That is a supermajority. That's no, 2/3. So Vince, would you like to speak to the motion?
We didn't meet quorum at the last meeting because too many people weren't present. So I emailed Deputy Speaker, who had me talk to Mike about which counselors are eligible for removal for having too many absences. He sent me a list of people. I submitted anyone who was eligible and also missed the most recent council meeting. And I guess Deputy Speaker removed any society presence from that list because I guess they would still need to have a seat and it would be a big pain to remove them. So yeah, nothing personal if your name is here, but you need to be able to meet quorum, and if counselors aren't showing up to council and doing their job, then, and if they're not going to resign, then I think council should remove them. The reason for suspending procedure 9 is, I guess there's supposed to normally be some special notice given that there wasn't time for, but given that at the last meeting, we were literally unable to conduct business because so many people were absent, I think it's appropriate to suspend the procedure in this case to make sure that we're able to conduct business for our August meeting.
Does anybody else wish to speak to the motion?
So this is more so a question, but if one of the counselors holds a council seat on the committee, what happens?
I imagine this seat becomes vacant.
I believe that Sahil sits on IFC and has responded to my request for availability.
You can present things,
My initial reaction is that if somebody is sitting on a committee by virtue of them being a counselor and they cease to be a counselor, then they can't hold the seat. But at the same time, the committee probably would be empowered to like decide to fill that vacancy. So you might just have to ask the committee if that individual attends the IFC meeting. You could just ask IFC if it's okay if they continue.
You can appoint them as an at-large member. If they're less.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, then we shall vote. Does anybody oppose the motion? Anybody wish to abstain? Okay, hearing neither, that carries unanimously. And you will note the members who have been removed. We move next to an item on the removal of delinquent members of IFC, whereas IFC has been unable to meet due to a lack of responsiveness of its voting members, whereas there are multiple proposals awaiting responses. Be it resolved that council delegates the authority to remove delinquent members and appoint new members to the committee, to the chair of the committee. Which would be staff. And that motion is submitted by Vice President Emo, who we shall consider the mover. Can I second? Steph, would you speak?
Yeah, hi, I have about 2 or 3 proposals currently waiting for response. And I've been unable to IFC, the lack of responsiveness from its voting membership. If I were to call a meeting, sort of the responses that I had earlier in the week, I did not gain quorum. It seems as if some folks have sort of responded at last, but there are 1 or 2 individuals who still have not responded. It would be very helpful if I were able to remove them from the committee. And probably I would say if anyone is interested on sitting on IFC, it's not a lot of work. You get to look at amazing student proposals to make changes within the student-led sort of environment. And you get to give people money or not give people money. It's fairly simple. It's one of my favorite things that I've done in my undergraduate career. So if there are any names that folks would like to put forward, if there are open seats, I'd love to have them filled. But yeah, it'd just be helpful for me to have the power to remove people who are not responsive.
Okay, any questions? Okay, anybody oppose the motion?
Oh, never mind, it's no life.
Okay, so again, does anybody oppose the motion? Does anybody wish to abstain? Hearing neither, that carries unanimously. We move to new business. Or any new business?
Want to change the auxiliary time?
Yeah, so I noticed when organizing transition dates that there is an important event on the weekend of the 21st. Wait, let me see. 14th. Oh yeah, there's an important transition activity on the weekend of the 14th. So that does not work well for a council meeting. would there be any opposition to changing the August meeting to the 21st of August?
So I guess strictly speaking, new business, we have to council has to be willing to consider it. So I guess I'll ask, is anybody opposed considering the item? And if more than a third do, then we won't consider it. So give you a bit of time. If you oppose considering changing the August meeting date, raise your hand now. Okay, so we'll consider it. Then I guess I'll move. Be it resolved that council rescheduled the August regular meeting to the 21st of August at 10 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Is there a second? That seconds. I have nothing to add. Okay. Then seeing nobody wants to speak to that, we'll go to a vote. Does anybody oppose rescheduling the August meeting to the 21st of August, 10 a.m.? Any abstentions? Hearing neither, motion carries. And we will note that change. Is there any new business? Okay, then we go to announcements. I'll say we have a couple of vacancies on elections and referenda committee. The board has delegated approval to fill those vacancies to myself and Cannon. So anybody who's interested, to be considered, of course, you can't be running in the election. It's a pretty light commitment. The committee typically will just meet to approve, to ratify the election results. Though if there are sort of allegations and disputes in the election, then that committee can be called on to resolve those issues. So it is an important function, but I'd say a relatively light commitment. If you're interested, feel free to just send me an email. And as long as you're not running, pretty much you'll get instantly appointed. Any other announcements?
Do your student course perception surveys. If you are interested in IFC, please shoot me an email at vped@wusa.ca. Sorry, I forgot my email.
Okay. I adjourn the meeting at 11:04. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
That August meeting of council is going to be quite delayed.
Yeah.